this week's top 5 is the top 5 Star Wars characters. The parameters are only from the movies and the TV show. No comics, all that expanded universe, games, books, all that. Just movies or TV show adaptations, which includes the Clone Wars and Rebels, the animated adaptations. So without further ado, we're only allowed 3 honorable mentions. Remember that.
Is this animated and?
Yes.
Oh, that I wasn't aware of that.
So you weren't adding the Clone Wars in?
I wasn't adding any animated stuff.
Yeah, I just figured that out, so I changed my list.
That would change.
Okay, just think about it while I go through mine.
Well, you think about yours.
I say we don't include animated stuff. And we do that for expanded universe later.
None of the characters
we're
all the characters in mine
include animated stuff.
But here's the thing: there's not really many characters in the animated that aren't in the movies. There's a couple, but
all right, my list still applies.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do that. We'll cut out the animated that the Clone Wars and Rebels counts as expanded universe. So only the movies, right? Basically, that's what we're saying. Only the movies.
Movies and regular live action.
Live action. So this is. Well, addendum it. It's the top 5 Star Wars characters that have been portrayed in live action by real people. So, Bowen, you want to start with your top 5?
I do want to start. So, number 5. Oh, man. Number 5. Number 5 is one that does not qualify. So, I'm going to have to go with... I'm going to go with Han Solo for number 5. I just love that ship. And anybody who piloted that ship. I thought that Harrison Ford did a great job. I mean, notwithstanding the last 3 films, but I'm not sure how far he made it. Anyway, so Han Solo I really liked. I really enjoyed. Thought he was excellently acted, and I just think the character arc of Han Solo was very interesting. So number 4, I'm going to go with Anakin Skywalker. And I know there's a lot of people out there who really love Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is a great character, probably the best villain to ever walk the screen.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And so I can't take anything away from Darth Vader, but I really think the way that Anakin was manipulated and the heart that he had and the struggle that he had, it's like someone I can identify with. And I just think that Anakin Skywalker was a tragic but amazing individual. And he did become Darth Vader. All right,
spoiler alert.
Number 3, we're going to go with Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka. Ahsoka would be higher, but once you see number 1 and number 2, you're going to understand why that Ahsoka can't beat those 2. I just love. Now we're not going into the Clone Wars and the other shows, but just the character of Ahsoka to me is, I don't know, it's just super cool. It's the coolest, one of the coolest new characters that's been created in the last 20 years. Number 2, which was an animated series but did show up in Andor, and this is where Drake just gave me a look because he knows where I'm going with this. Chopper.
He showed up in Andor?
Chopper was in Andor not Andor. Which is the movie? This is where Bones' memory fades. Rogue One. He was in Rogue One. There's a hangar scene where they actually they're calling for General Syndulla over the overhead, and then Chopper rolls by. Chopper rolls by. It's an amazing. So I just love Chopper. I can't really talk much about Chopper's behavior because all you do is see him roll by. But that was a cool looking droid when he rolled by. Am I right?
No, you can listen. You can add your extensive knowledge of him counts into why you like him, but it's just that he has to be.
Well, I like the fact that Chopper was so loyal to Hera. And I like the fact that he was such a jerk in the first couple episodes. I mean, he was a jerk. And then he started to kind of change his ways, and I'm not sure how much droids are, how much they feel or how sentient they are, but I just love Chopper. And number 1 only beats Chopper because, and this is where
it's obvious.
Where Doc is like, yeah, I know this is R2-D2. And it's like, so my initial attraction to R2-D2 as a kid is that scene in the valley whenever he's by himself. C-3PO disses him and they separate. And the Jawa comes up and shoots him. And he goes, and he falls over. And as a kid, I would just take R2-D2, stand him up and just push him over. I did that hundreds of times. So, but it's the idea that R2 was involved in all of that stuff from the very beginning. He was there in every, in every capacity. And I just think the little blue droid's just super cool.
I must say, not unexpected. Not unexpected at all. There was not once where I was shocked or appalled.
Well, I had to change it because
what was the number 5 that before Han Solo?
Number 5 was it was Kanan Jarrus.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, interesting.
You
know, you're able to bring you could have. What's too late?
Oh, the honorable mentions.
Yeah. I usually do those first.
Let's do the honorable mentions at the end. I'll let you guys do them, and then I'll throw mine down. I don't want to take away from you.
Go ahead, Drake. You want to go or you want me to go?
You go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to be different. Listen. I'm going to start with my honorable mentions because this will explain why I'm on my list, right? The first honorable mention. What is my first honorable? Okay. First honorable mention has to be Luke Skywalker. And this is, listen, obviously y'all are much, 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 much older than me. That was meant to be a diss. I'm sorry. I'm a prequels kid. So, Luke, listen. Okay, first off, we're all adults here. So we can all admit that the sequels don't exist. They never existed.
Which ones are you talking about?
The sequels. The ones that don't exist. If you remember the deleted scene, in episode 9 where Luke Skywalker wakes up and it was all a dream. You remember that deleted scene? I do remember that. It was deleted so early it was never
It's one of the few things I can remember.
Yeah. But so I didn't get to, listen, outside of all that, Luke Skywalker is really awesome. He's really cool. He's amazing. But I just didn't have the connection with him because, I was a prequels kid. I didn't really have the connection with him. I didn't really get super into him. And then the other two honorable mentions are Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. And that's because obviously it's more like you're Mary Jane. They have to be above the list because they're the two of the greatest ones ever. But I don't want them to take up 2 spots on the list. I want the list to spotlight other characters. This is my favorite characters. Darth Vader is the greatest, I think, in the argument of the greatest movie villain ever. He's just that awesome. And then Emperor Palpatine. I mean, you've written a character that has 0 redeemable qualities. He's just pure evil. This is just evil. That is the greatest embodiment of evil. There's very few characters of just evil. And not doing because there's the cheap evil. It's he's evil because he murders children. No, he's just evil because everything about him every atom of him is evil. He's the embodiment of the dark side. Really cool, amazing writing, and all of that. But they're not my favorite characters. These are my top 5 favorite characters. So that out of the way. Number 5 is going to be Grandmaster Yoda. He's just cool, man. He's adorable, but he's a beast. And here's the thing about Yoda. He's a beast, man. 1,000 years old almost. Incredibly powerful. I mean, he's just really, he's just really awesome. He's just cool. He's Yoda. He's just this little guy, but then he's when he goes beast mode, it's and he's got all these powers. And when he's just in that with Count Dooku and with Emperor Palpatine, he's just got that. He's got it comes out a little bit every once in a while. He's got a little bit of sass, but he backs it up. So he's this peaceful guy, but then he's yeah, but you still got a lot to learn, buddy. I trained you. And it's oh, you think you're so powerful, Emperor Palpatine. Number 4 is gonna be Count Dooku. Count Dooku is a beast, man. I love that actor. That guy, he passed away. First, that actor overall, Christopher Lee is one of the coolest people, one of the most badass people ever to live. I tell this story all the time, but this is a little sidetrack, but when he was in Lord of the Rings, this dude actually killed people. He was in Lord of the Rings. He got stabbed in Lord of the Rings. And the director came to him and was trying to tell him how to act it out. You need to act it this way. And he was no, I've stabbed people before, and this is how people sound when they're stabbed. That's not how they sound. That dude was he was like James Bond. As a matter of fact, he was part of the inspiration. He was friends with the guy who created James Bond, wrote James Bond character. He's just a really cool actor and he had a crazy life. But overall, his character. Listen, Count Dooku is the one Jedi that Emperor Palpatine worried about. Because Count Dooku, while all the Jedi, he was the master of Form 2, which is to fight other lightsaber and force wielders, right? He was a master of it was lightsaber dueling. All the Jedi had left because they're the Sith are gone. It's been 1,000 years or whatever. He was the one who Emperor Palpatine worried about, and that's why he took him and made him his apprentice, because he was the one that he had. It was all right, this guy, because he had some serious skills, and he's just this regal character, this really cool guy. He's a bad guy, obviously, but he's just awesome, man. I might be a little, because I like the actor as well. Some of these you'll find that. Number 3 is going to be Mace Windu. Samuel L. Jackson. He did not die, by the way. He's still alive. I believe that that's just canon because I said it is. Actually, technically, George Lucas said he was alive because Samuel L. Jackson asked him, "Can Mace Windu still be alive?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." but I mean, this guy. Listen, I mean, all the abilities this guy has. Shatterpoint. He beat Emperor Palpatine in this lightsaber duel. He created his own lightsaber form, which is basically the forbidden lightsaber form that the Sith use, and he was the only guy able to use it. The other guy who he created it with turned to the dark side, and he was the only guy who was able to not if you don't, which you don't until you dig into the expanded universe know about him. He walks the dark side. He's more of a gray Jedi, and he has that. That's kind of the same, and that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why he never really got along with Anakin is they have the same similar qualities where they have that thing, but he has that control and that ability over it to turn it back around and to turn you, and he can turn your strengths into your weaknesses and turn it back around on you. He's got these really cool abilities. And Samuel L. Jackson, one of the greatest travesties is he doesn't have an MF moment. He doesn't get to say his famous line in Star Wars at some point, which he should have. And as I said, he's still alive. I've decided he's still alive. That was 3, right? Number 2 is Qui-Gon Jinn. I was episode 1. Listen, a lot of people don't like episode 1, and I understand. It's, nobody really cares about the complexities of Galactic Trade Federation stuff. But when I was a kid, Qui-Gon shows up, Liam Neeson, really cool actor. He's just the hair, just the look. I was like, that's a Jedi. That makes sense. That should be what he's just this big, powerful, strong guy, this really cool character. Everyone who knows anything about Star Wars knows if he hadn't died, he would have saved Anakin, and Anakin would not become Darth Vader, and they would be. He was the guy. He should have been. He should have stayed alive. And what's the saddest thing is everyone else survives from the same wound that he dies of. But he's the guy who taught Yoda and Obi-Wan how to survive into the Force, right? He's that guy. He's the guy. He was just a cool guy. And when I was a kid, after that, I would read the Jedi Quest, I think it was called series, where it was the Obi-Wan and young Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and their stories, and it was these books, and it was just he was just this I just love that character, man. And one movie stole our hearts, Liam Neeson. Plus when you add his other stuff, if we had a Taken style Liam Qui-Gon Jinn movie. Anyways, number 1 for me is The Negotiator, General Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Listen, I don't know what it is, okay? Because honestly, a lot of people, are big into Anakin Skywalker, and a lot of them, I know there's people out there who are like Anakin Skywalker, and they kind of identify with Anakin. I don't identify with Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know. Just as a kid, before I even knew who the character was, when I heard his name as a kid, I was like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's a cool name. And just something about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've always loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've always rooted for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, this guy, first, let's just be clear. He's a badass. All right. He is, Mace Windu called him the Form 3 master. He's the master. Here's the thing about Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's actually not that powerful in the Force. As compared to the others, he wasn't actually his midichlorian count wasn't really that high. He trained himself to become that powerful. He worked his ass off to become that powerful. He mastered the form that because of his mastery, he was the mastery of Cerriso, Form 3. He was able to withstand far more superior Force users and duelists. I mean, Anakin was stronger than him in Episode 3, and he was able to beat him with his ability, with the mastery of the Force, and all the work he had put in for focus and all those things. I think I've been a bigger one defender. I think in my head canon, he's the most powerful Jedi of all time, even though he's not. You're wrong.
Head canon?
In my head canon, Obi-Wan Kenobi is, even though I know that that's what was written, in my head canon, I go, no, Obi-Wan Kenobi is like a Force 12 to 18 million. He's just the best. Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's just the god of Star Wars. I think he gets a bad rap. Listen, Qui-Gon's the one who chose him to take it over. A lot of people give him the bad rap and say, well, if Obi-Wan had done his job better. But I think then, there's a lot to be said there with the storyline of how, when you later on, everything he has to go through after, when he's sitting on Tatooine, now basically having to come to the understanding that everything he was taught and trained is wrong. Right? That is all wrong. I love that character. I think he was a cool guy. I think he's the man. He's the guy. Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know what it is. I've always loved Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I knew as your list was going, and that you're a prequels kid, I was like, it has to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. It has to be.
The negotiator.
So I'm going to tell you, after listening to everybody's list, my 5 haven't changed. It's just trying to figure out where I'm putting 4 and 5, which one's first and which one's second. And I really love the prequels, and I really love the original movies. And disclosure, as you both know, I haven't watched the trilogy that they call the end of the trilogy. I can't do it.
The whatever.
Yeah. So, I have a couple honorable mentions. One of them, two of them are Han Solo and Princess Leia. They are 2 of my honorable mentions. Harrison Ford changed the way I looked at certain types of characters in movies. And he was one of those actors that, between Indiana Jones and Han Solo, it was just amazing. But I was drugged. We should do a top 5 for the prequel trilogy and a top 5 for the original trilogy, and then the expanded universe and all the other animated deals. So we can narrow, because I have more than 5 characters, but the problem is when you ask about my top 5 characters from all of the live action stuff, I really like a lot of the new TV shows. I do.
I feel like I just gave my top 5 prequel trilogy characters.
And
so just copy and paste.
My other honorable mention at this point would be Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
And because I like what they've done in the TV shows, but I wasn't as excited about what they did with Boba Fett as I was with little Boba Fett in the prequels and Boba Fett in the original movies. Boba Fett was just this mysteriously cool character, and he had a cool ship, and he's like gets him, and he's like, he's worth something to me, and Vader turns and it's like, well, you'll be compensated when they're freezing him in Cloud City, and that's just some stuff that when they first introduced him, like, who is this guy? This is crazy. So those are my 3 honorable mentions: Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Boba Fett. And Princess Leia to me is just horribly underused after the fact. But that's for a whole different video. So my number 5. So 4 and 5 for me, I'm not sure who I want to put 5 and who I want to put 4. So 5 is General Grievous. Huh?
That was my next guess.
I'm actually surprised.
I think I know who number 4 is, if not
General
number 1. Go ahead.
Grievous.
5 is General Grievous, and 4 is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's prequel Obi-Wan Kenobi. I loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. Alec Guinness was amazing. I'd seen him in a couple other movies, and I thought he was cool. But he was so there and gone. But he's such an influence through the original trilogy for Luke that I'm like, this guy is amazing. And in the prequel trilogy, you couldn't not be an Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. I loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. And
that's what I've been
as
saying.
he is not like in the rankings of like dueling and all this other stuff, he wasn't as great as a swordsman as Count Dooku or Anakin or Mace Windu. But he found a way. He found ways to be triumphant. I mean, in each time he found ways to get the job done.
I think that, you know, when the Anakin that's laying on the lava shore would disagree with you on the swordsman side.
I would agree. Well, that was. You
do have to admit that Obi-Wan did have a leg up on Anakin.
Yeah,
he had the high ground.
So General Grievous, in these movies, I really like the villains. The villains and the way that the whole plot that the Emperor Palpatine brought out in the Phantom Menace, this villain that wasn't really it was hiding in plain sight, and all the different pieces. The thing about Grievous, he was different. He was a completely unique character for Star Wars at the time. You had droids and you had people, or aliens or humans and droids. But Grievous was like this character, this this other alien race character that had been all messed up, and they had to repair him with robotics, and he was like Darth Vader before Darth Vader. He had killed all these Jedis and had all the different arms and the lightsabers, and he was just, to me, when I saw the prequel, I was like, wow, he's freaking cool. And it seemed like if they had just unleashed him and Palpatine wasn't playing both sides against themselves, he probably would have been a lot more successful than he was. Plus, he put all these droids that could barely walk in a straight line and not shoot each other. But Grievous and Dooku were that I would have liked to have seen an actual duel with Grievous versus other Jedis, and not just because that fight with Obi-Wan near the end when they're actually fighting, that got so far beyond just a lightsaber duel, because Obi-Wan ends up shooting him with a blaster in the heart. But that whole fight scene in Attack of Clones to me really was until you get to the climax with Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting.
You mean Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, until you get to the climax. No, in Attack of Clones, that battle between... Oh, no, is that in Revenge of the Sith?
Revenge of the Sith.
It is Revenge of the Sith. So, and until you get to the battle with Obi-Wan and Anakin, that is like probably the fight where you really get to see Obi-Wan. And he's surrounded by all these people, and you're like, well, he's in trouble. And he still pulls it out. So, that's why I put Obi-Wan ahead of Anakin, ahead of
Grievous.
And Grievous is a little bit behind him, but for the film base, I those two are great. All right, number 3. Number 3 for me is Luke Skywalker, and there is not enough time to explain about all the reasons why I like Luke Skywalker. He was that nobody kid off a planet that ends up with a droid and goes to save the universe. Saves the princess, blows up the Death Star, and he becomes this Jedi that is just like he starts checking boxes off. And a lot of that is not in the movie side, which is why we'll talk about some of that stuff later, but he ends up in all the different lightsaber forms you were talking about. He masters all of them. So he does things that even Yoda hadn't done, and he keeps mastering more and more and more, and just keeps building on it to the point where if they had continued on the way we had hoped they had done, we would have seen a different Luke in the third trilogy. So Luke is there. Number 2 for me. Number 2 is R2-D2, and R2-D2 is the hero of every movie. He's, at least in the original 3 movies and the prequel trilogy, he saves somebody's ass, or the collective's asses, in every single movie in one way or another.
The collective asses.
Like, in the first movie, if it was not for him, they all die in the trash compactor. In Empire Strikes Back, he gets the hyperdrive working so they can get away from Vader at the end after they've already gotten their butts kicked. Return of the Jedi, he's got Luke's lightsaber. He's just, then in the first movie, Phantom Menace, he fixes the hyperdrive and all that when they're trying to get through the blockade and they get away. Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones. What was the key piece in there? It has to be when they're captured and they're on Geonosis, and they've been captured in Geonosis, and he's working something out in there.
He saved Padme. He saved
Obi-Wan and all of them. Yeah.
I believe I think he saved Anakin.
Padme. And then Revenge of the Sith. It's just art. And then later in Legends, because it's not even canon anymore, he's basically of the 2 droids. Bail Organa wipes 3PO, but R2's never wiped. So there are times in different stories where he has everything. He knows, he's got the whole story. He knows everything, and he fills different people in at different times. And it's like, he's this droid that just kind of wanders around through, this person has him, and then he hangs out with this person, he hangs out with that person, and only diverges information when he feels that it's necessary. And he's pretty awesome. And my number 1 is Darth Vader, but it's Anakin Darth Vader, because you can't have one without the other. They're the same character.
They are?
Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. So Darth Vader is it. And for the same reason that Bone likes Anakin Skywalker, I like him the same reason. The amount of turmoil that he goes through. He loses his mother. He's a slave. He's saved. He can't save his mom. He has the issue with the Sand People. Then he comes back. He marries Padme in secret. He keeps having these reoccurring dreams in the Force that he's going to lose his wife, and he wants to, whatever he has to do to save his wife. He feels like the Jedi Council is moving against him. He's got this crazy father figure in Palpatine that's just playing everything against him and pitting him against the Jedi while he's still trying to do the right thing. And he just, everything is driving around him trying to protect the ones he loves. And he's manipulated and used in such a horrible fashion. And then later he becomes Vader. And like we've said, greatest villain of all time. I can't think of it. I could come up with a couple villains I like, but no one that is on a level with Vader. And the whole point of the storyline was the rise, fall, and the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So at least in the original Star Wars, the story is about Anakin Skywalker. It's about Darth Vader. And for me, they sold me. I bought all in on Anakin Skywalker, and he was the guy for me. And I that's my top 5.
I'm amazed that Darth Maul did not make it in an honorable mention or anything because I know how much you love Darth Maul.
I was shocked that I was not. I did not know you were such a General Grievous fan.
I like Grievous.
Can I get my
Honorable mentions? But I'd let real quickly.
Go ahead.
No, you do that real quickly because then from there, I have another thing I'd like to ask y'all.
The Grievous thing.
No, from the Anakin thing, I'd like to ask you a question.
The General Grievous thing for me was because of how influential the original trilogy was. I could have just thrown 5 original trilogy members out there, but I really like the prequels. And when I go to watch movies, generally when I watch a Star Wars now, you would be surprised at the 2 or 3 movies that I gravitate to watch. The one I watched the most is Rogue One. It was very difficult not to put Jyn Erso in this list. Right. And number 2 is Revenge of the Sith. Because of Obi-Wan and General Grievous and all of these things that were going on and the stuff in the ships. And the beginning when they get on there and they kill Dooku and they're on the bridge and Grievous is like, oh, well,
it was really the penultimate.
Out the window I go and you guys are going to die.
It was really the penultimate, movie because, it had all of these strands that
There's
had to be
no way to
together.
do a top 5 and leave some aspect of Revenge of the Sith out of it.